thank you for giving me this opportunity to share my views and to provide an opportunity to interact with the younger generation of this country, which is the future of this country. I would like to begin the whole discussion on this topic with a small story that appears to be very meaningful for me. There was a big pond outside a village, and it had a lot of fishes in that pond. So one fine morning, a fisherman came with his wife near the bank of the pond, and he was just looking for some good place for fishing where he could get adequate number of fishes to be sold in the market. So he was accompanied by his wife. He told his wife, look, tomorrow morning, we must come to this pond and do fishing because I can see a large number of fishes in this pond. Now he went away. After that, the crisis was there. So the fishes around, swimming in that pond, there were three groups of three families, big families. So one was the family of Sahasra Buddhi, a fish with 1,000 intellect. As we know, Sahasra means 1,000. And another big family was, whose leader was Shat Buddhi, that is the fish with 100 types of intellect. And the third family was belonged to a fish which was called Ek Buddhi, which means single-minded intellect. So since there was a crisis and everybody got worried that next morning we'll be caught in the net, so we have to do something. So since Sahasra Buddhi had a large family, he called a meeting, he or she, whatever you like to call. And then there was a lot of discussion, and finally he gave the solution. He said, look, I have 1,000 types of intellect. I'm very sharp, and I can find 1,000 ways of, saving the entire family from the net of the fisherman. So we will try our best tomorrow morning. So another meeting was called by Shat Buddhi, and the whole family was there. So Shat Buddhi said, look, I am also very brilliant, and I have 100 types of intellect. I can think in 100 ways. So I can escape, I can manage with my family. I'm not going to leave this pond. Now Ek Buddhi had a small family, poor guy, not poor because he had a small family, but because he had only one type of intellect. He said, I am not so brilliant, but my intellect is pointed intellect, and my goal is very clear. He said, look, to me, it appears that I will not be able to escape from the fisherman's net. And it is better that we move to the next neighboring pond. And there was a connecting drain, drain of water. We can move to the next neighboring pond so that at least for the time being, we can save ourselves next morning. So next morning, as expected, the fisherman came with his whole family and spread out the net. First, he wanted to, get hold of the large family of Sahasra Buddhi. So Sahasra Buddhi, due to his massive intellect and brilliance, tried its best to manage things. But somehow everybody was caught in the net, and nobody could be saved. Next was the term of Shat Buddhi. So they also tried their best because they had 100 ways of thinking and moving out, escaping the net of the fisherman. But ultimately, the fisherman was also quite smart, and he had also 100 types of intellect. So all of them, all the members of the family got stuck up in the net, and finally they were caught, and their fate is well known. Ek Buddhi, what it had done in the night, they had moved on to some other neighboring pond through the water drain, which was connecting both the ponds. So it could save itself. The story ends here. Now, this story has two very important lessons which are very relevant for the present context. One is that many times in life, 1,000 solutions may not help, and one single solution can be very helpful. It can save life. Secondly, the opportunity to fight or to go for flight, as we call it in psychology, fight or flight. So we have to be very careful about these two opportunities. Yes, we should fight, but there is a point when we should apply our intelligence, common sense, and think whether we can fight this pandemic with the resources, this crisis with the resources that we have at our command. So at times, it's better to leave the pond, the place. As all of us can recollect, both these strategies were adopted in the pandemic by our countrymen and even the world around us. Hundreds and thousands of people left the urban centers, which were badly affected by the pandemic. To name a few centers like Mumbai and even many other places, not necessary to name them. And they went back to their villages because they had no other option. They were ek buddhi. So they thought better go to the village and stay safe in the village. And let me tell you, they were safe in the villages of Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, and neighboring states. Many people tried to fight because they had no option also at times. And they thought, I have all the resources. Everything is at my command. I can manage. But it did not work. I'm narrating a true story. One of my juniors, he studied in Delhi, and he was a master of Delhi. He knew all the hospitals and all the places, large number of doctors, good doctors he knew personally. So his father became a victim of this COVID. He was sure initially he tried to manage at his home. I'm talking about the Delta phase, which was the most dangerous and which proved to be very bad for the whole world and especially this country. So he tried to manage at his flat with his friends who were doctors. They were consulted, they advised everything possible that was done. But ultimately, when his father was critical, he took out his car, could somehow, take him by car to a hospital. He first chose those hospitals which he knew, where the doctors were known. So he kept moving around from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. He left early in the morning because his father was, not able to breathe, and he required immediate oxygen and maybe a ventilator also. So he moved from place to place. And when it was afternoon, say around 4 o'clock in the evening, when he was standing outside a hospital, and all the hospitals, as we know, they said, we don't have vacancy, we can't accommodate him. Sorry, we have no option. And finally, around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, after 7-8 hours of moving around in different hospitals of Delhi, his father died in the car which he was driving personally. And let me tell you, after that incident, when he saw his father dying before his eyes in his own car, his he got mentally affected. What we call in psychology PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. And for a couple of months, he had to undergo psychiatric treatment by the doctors because he could not wipe out the memory of his father dying in his presence. So this example, this real example I am sharing with you, because at times when the resources are limited, when you are not able to make a real estimate of your resources, time, energy, money, technical resources, then it's better to take a wiser decision instead of taking a casual approach that, look, I'll manage things. At times in crisis, we are not able to manage things and everything collapses, like what happened in this case. Now, when we talk about psychiatric treatment, large number of people, I personally know many doctors who saw a large number of patients dying in ICUs, and they said, now it's difficult to tolerate this scenario and we'll get mentally affected. So series of traumas they saw. A famous Swiss psychologist, psychiatrist, and a philosopher also, Carl Jung, who collaborated with Sigmund Freud, the great psychologist we all know. He had said that life, has a curve. Life is like a curve. And he said it is like a parabolic curve. We all know, we have read in our science books, textbooks, what is a parabolic curve. He says life is like a parabolic curve. And I'm quoting this gentleman. He says the curve of life is like the parabola of a projectile disturbed from its initial state of rest, rises like the curve, and then returns to a state of repose. And then again he says that life has a spiritual purpose beyond material goal. Beyond material goal, life has a purpose. I'm quoting Carl Jung because he was a scientist. And when he refers to parabolic curve, such curves, life always seen, everybody has come across such situations in life when despite everything, around you, situation goes beyond control, we are not able to manage things. It happens in academic life, it happens in professional life, it happens in personal life also. So this, I think, was the first lesson that the pandemic taught to us. At least I learned from this, that if a critical situation is there, we have to assess our resources properly. At times, we are not able to do that. We are not able to evaluate because we are caught in an emotional wildfire. Like what happened to Arjuna before the battle of Kurukshetra. He had all the resources, a huge, large army standing behind him. But he was shivering, his lips got dried up, he was not able to speak up, and he left the chariot and sat down on the ground where both the armies had assembled to fight a massive battle. And even a warrior, great warrior like Arjuna, literally he had to face a nervous breakdown because he was caught in an emotional wildfire. He thought that he cannot manage things. But again, that is not the solution. And every time, if we, get down from the chariot of life and say we can't fight, we may not get a Lord Krishna, a Redeemer, a Savior, who can come to our rescue and spend 140 minutes, which forms the Bhagavad Gita today. The pandemic, I'm trying to pick up the lessons that pandemic has left for us so that we can rebuild, start afresh, and transform our life, picking up the lessons that the pandemic has left for us. Now we all know about a term, global village. Everybody talks about it and everybody knows about it. It was a term used 60 years ago by a great media theorist, Marshall McLuhan. He was a Canadian, but ultimately he settled in USA. And he wrote a landmark book, which is called the Gutenberg Galaxy. And later on, he wrote another book, on media. So Marshall McLuhan told that the whole world has become a village thanks to information. Hello, am I audible or should I stop?
Just a second, some noise is coming. I'll request other people to mute yourself.
Could I continue now?
Yes, you can continue now.
I hope I'm going across and they are able to hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, fine. So I was talking about Marshall McLuhan's term global village, which was used 60 years ago. So we keep on talking about the global, the whole globe turning into a small village. Is that really so? We have to ask this question to ourselves. Is that really so? Because, some incidents happened in this 21st century. For example, 9/11, all of us know what happened to the Twin Towers. That was 11th of September 2002. But the whole world came together. I'm trying to drive the point home that in critical situations, we get united. But again, when the crisis is over, we tend to get disunited.
Continue, sir.
Ma'am, can I continue?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, fine. Because of some, voices around, I think I get interrupted.
So,
anyway.
To give you insight about this.
Now,
put your mic off.
Yeah. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank
you. So, September 11 was the date of 9/11. The whole world got united and raised the voice against terrorism. And but on the same day, we might have forgotten, that is September 11th, but 1893, going back to history. On the same day, 11th September 1893, when Swami Vivekananda addressed the World Parliament of Religions and addressed the whole audience as sisters and brothers of America, he received a standing ovation for 2 minutes. And that speech has become a historical speech made by Swami Vivekananda, sisters and brothers of America. Now, this concept, I'm deliberately connecting these incidents because we definitely talk that we are brothers and sisters, we are children of the Almighty, we are children of the Mother Earth, Janni Jan Bhumisha Swargadapi Gariyasi, all these things. And if you further go back, somebody said, a great poet and saint, he talked about Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. Ayam nija paroveti garna laghu chetsam. Udar charita nantu Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. He said that for the noble people, those who have noble thinking, the whole world is a family. Now, we have to move ahead in this spirit that we are a family. This is the first social lesson that the crisis has taught to us. Initially, I talked about the personal trauma and personal management of a crisis, and then how can one get out of it. But when it comes to the collective consciousness, we have to think in terms of a family. Otherwise, we stand disunited. We can't fight the whole tragedies of life alone. That's why when we read Shakespeare and we read the famous tragedy Hamlet, We all know about it. To be or not to be, that is the question. And then Hamlet says, whether it is nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to raise arms against a sea of troubles and by opposing end them. Whether I should fight or leave this whole syndrome. No, we have to fight. That was the Hamletian dilemma. He could not decide what he has to do. And ultimately, he died in a duel. He could not achieve his goal. His father was killed by his uncle. We know the story of Hamlet. It's a very famous drama of Shakespeare, tragedy of Shakespeare, that is taught in colleges and schools also. So we have to be very clear about the goal in life. At times, there is lack of clarity, there is confusion. When we go out for a drive on a highway in winter, when the road is foggy and misty, we use the fog light and we go slow. And they say in driving, in the language of drivers, go slow when the visibility is low. This applies to life also. There are many situations when we are not able to see across. We are not able to project our thinking towards future. What will happen? How it will happen? How will I achieve this goal? How will I get a good placement? And what should I do for a good placement, which I think is good? Others may not think. Somebody may like to go to the oil industry, to the banking sector, which pays very well. But at times, something that we plan may not come out as we have planned. I'll give a very, a very concrete example from my own experience. My son is an electrical engineer from Delhi College of Engineering. So, at the time of placement, many, corporates and all sorts of people come. The placement people organize things. That's wonderful. So, a big oil giant also came. The whole college, all the boys and girls, about 400 roughly, they took the exam. The exam was, there were 2 exams and then 2 interviews. So because the package was very good, very attractive, young boys and girls, they look for the package. Names also get published in newspapers. This college has this boy or girl has the best placement. It goes in millions and whatever. So there was one guy who was selected from that college. Fortunately, that was my son. He got into it. We were also, his name was published in the Times of India. We were very happy. What a package he has got. Now look, everything, all that glitters is not gold. He landed up in the oil sector. He got his training at Scotland, Texas. Texas is supposed to be the mother of oil industries. I think the first oil was explored at Texas in USA. But ultimately, he had to move to the field, offshore fields. Mostly, life was a big torture. Life was, you may be getting so much of money. You are flush with money. I mean, you don't have money. You don't have, you don't know how to spend your money, because you are spending most of the time either in the Bay of Bengal or in Arabian Sea or in the Persian Gulf. And then life, I'm not discouraging the young blood. One may always take it as a challenge of staying offshore for long periods, but life is tough. Life is very, very tough. And ultimately, it can prove to be disastrous. I'm giving the example because it has a lesson. Ultimately, what happened? He landed up at Basra. Basra is the southern tip of Iraq, like Kanyakumari of India. So one fine morning, that was the time when it was 2015, when ISIS, the terrorist group, had marched into Iraq, and they had captured some northern towns of Iraq, and they were slowly moving towards Baghdad. So one fine morning when they were, it was not offshore. It was in the desert, It was a huge establishment in the desert. Oil exploration was going on. So, a gang of, a group of terrorists with AK-47, they entered their huge establishment. A British security guard was there. He tried to resist. He was immediately shot down. And then there, the siren went off. So everybody went back and locked their small rooms. The senior engineers had small rooms where they could spend their night. They were not actually bunkers; they were rooms. But yes, it was not very comfortable. Okay, so they all locked, and these guys, these terrorists were looking for somebody whom they thought were informing the government about the movement of ISIS group. Informer, as we say in police language. So they were trying to locate the informer. Somehow they might have got the information. So ultimately they knocked brutally at each door. They tried to break open many doors. And all these young boys, no girls, that's why most of the oil sector, especially in the field postings, among say 100 engineers, you can hardly find a girl. So that's a different story altogether. So finally, what happened? The whole unit, I'm cutting it short, the whole unit was shut down. There was a crisis. Somehow my son went out somewhere from some rooftop, some place. He rang me up. Okay, look, we are in a crisis and they have told we'll come again and shoot down somebody. That somebody, who was that? But somebody nobody knew. And everybody faced the threat of life. So, what happens? What happens? Then I had to contact the ambassador of India, Mr. Reddy at Baghdad. I spoke to him. I went to the Ministry of External Affairs. I contacted a joint secretary. He got me connected. I spoke to Mr. Reddy. I said, look, my son is in trouble and all young people, so many young boys and boys from India are in trouble and they are caught there at Basra. Somehow, thanks to that great ambassador, I still remember his name, Mr. Reddy from Andhra. So he managed things and ultimately they were shipped, they were brought to Dubai by a chartered plane, and from Dubai, they came by a commercial flight. So this is what can happen. All that glitters is not good. And then ultimately, what can happen in such a situation? He also said, look, I will not go back to the oil sector. So he went for management. And fortunately, he got through INSEAD, which was at that time the world #1. It has 3 campuses, as you might be knowing, Abu Dhabi, Singapore, and 90 kilometers away from Paris. So he landed on the main campus at Paris, and then he did his management, and he's now in a different stream altogether. He's on the management side. So I narrated this incident to suggest a point that in life, everything that glitters may not be gold. We are at times, not able to assess the real situation. My son even today tells that nobody told me, and that the oil sector in field postings could be so tough, could be so dangerous, especially if you land up in Middle East. Number of countries of Middle East are affected by, these terrorist movements. From Syria, lot many countries. All of us know nothing new about it. So life is like this. We have to go very carefully. Now, when I say go very carefully, the first important thing about human beings is what? Physical and mental health. Physical and mental health. For every job, you need to be in sound health. And health is an integrated concept. If you go by the definition of World Health Organization, they have clearly laid down that it is multidimensional concept. Physical health, we have to be fit and fine. There is no doubt about it. These days, there's a trend towards going to the gym. It's very good. But I know young people dying in cardio exercises, overdoing things. So there again, one has to be careful. I'm not trying to create panic or fear in, in the minds, but I'm giving some concrete examples. We should assess the whole situation and assess our resources also before we jump into the well. Okay, look, two guys are doing so well in gym, so I also want to become, a great person from gym, flexing my muscles, and all the film stars are doing it, not knowing that most of them are using steroids, which are not permitted in gyms anyways. So this is physical health. We all know about it. I don't want to elaborate on that. Now let me focus on the mental health, psychic health part, which is most critical, which is what the pandemic has taught us. And we need to build up our resources on this psychic health, which is very important. We have seldom tried to analyze, number one, our psychic needs. What do we actually want from life? Do we want money and money only? There is no doubt that adequate amount of money is required for living properly in life. There's no doubt about that. Nobody can question that. But then, is that enough? Can money bring peace in life, or something else is required? So these questions have to be asked, and I'm not here to give the answers, because the decision is always in the hands of the person who is facing the situation. My point is that psychic health is a very critical item. We have to take care of this. And the traumas that people have undergone in the Delta phase of the pandemic, especially in this country, can never be wiped out from memories of thousands of people. Thousands of people, I know dozens of people, between 30 and 45 who have lost their lives, parents who have lost their children. We all know. It is something which is common knowledge. Every family has lost somebody near or remote, What does the whole thing teach us? Physical health, psychic health, both are important. Evaluation of resources is equally important. We need to evaluate things around. We need to understand two things: content, the actual resources, and the context, whether both are synchronizing, whether both are matching. Because we may be having good resources, but outside we don't have the support, so we are finished. Then if we have resources outside, we don't have the content, again we are finished. But one good thing that we have learned from this whole scenario, pandemic, it has not yet left, but yes, is planning to leave. Nobody knows when it will leave. This pandemic has taught us the importance of technology in life. The way vaccines were made by our scientists in labs, hats off to them. And it is today, due to those doses, at booster doses, all the doses have been given, they are being given by the government and by the countries around the world. It's a global phenomenon, The pandemic has come under control. Many people, I talk to some doctors, they say, look, it doesn't help. No, many wrong myths are being floated by people. I don't know why. Because after taking both the doses, I went for this, check antibodies test from Lal Lab, which is the most, famous lab, at least in Delhi and in this area. And those antibodies were there in my body. The adequate level was there. So not that if somebody says, look, it is useless. No, these are myths being propagated by people. I don't know with what vested interests, I cannot say. So technology, yes, I am talking to the people who are dealing with technology, who are studying. But yes, technology definitely has helped humanity. It will continue to help in normal situations. Today, I am able to talk to you because of technology. For 30 years back, it was not possible to talk, to go for a video conference on Zoom. Nobody had heard of it. So technology has really reshaped the world, and we need to optimize on technology. We need to leverage technology in our lives so that we can take the advantage at the personal level, at the family level, at the community level, at the country level, at the global level. But yes, technology has its limits. Science and technology, they go together, One is the applied part, other is the theoretical part. They have their limits. And all big crises in life, they show the limits of science and technology. We know that despite the best medication of COVID patients, hundreds of people could not survive. They were put on ventilators. They were given all the possible drugs by the doctors. They could not survive. And you can't say people with comorbidity, young people with no morbidity, they could not survive. Because this particular virus was fond of colonization in the lungs. It created a massive colony in the lungs and above. So it's difficult to fight against such problems in life, So technology helps, but then beyond a certain limit, it is something which is beyond technology, does help, does come to the rescue. That force, you may not call God, you may call God, you may call supernatural forces, by whichever name you try to understand it, address it, it does exist. It does exist. Nobody can deny that. Einstein, one of the leading, greatest scientists, what did he say? He said that the harmony that I see in this universe, it indicates the presence of some force controlling the whole universe, cosmos. It is true. For lakhs and lakhs of years, thousands and thousands of galaxies are coexisting. I'm using the word coexisting at certain, with certain fixed laws of attraction and repulsion. Repulsion, I am telling, because the galaxies are running away from each other. And they say it is some SRF, stellar repellent force, which is throwing away the galaxies from each other. For millions of years, it is happening. 1 or 2 meteors have fallen, no doubt, but the cosmos has not collapsed. There is a control. There is definitely a control. We cannot and we should not forget that control. What have we actually done? When the whole cosmos is running in harmony, in great symphony, are we able to do that in society? No. A small family also, we cannot manage. Parents find it difficult to manage 2 children because there is lack of, symphony. Family, a small family is like, orchestra playing on a stage. If one instrument plays a different tune, the game is over. Well, everybody has to, play different instruments with in the same rhythm and tune, raga, whatever you call it, the Occidental ragas or the Oriental ones. So this harmony we have not been able to develop because the mismatch between speed and rhythm. What is happening that I can see with the present generation. Kindly don't mistake me. Everywhere there is a problem. Even in the generation older than yours, speed is different, rhythm is different. We are young people, are adventurous, impetuous. Yes, everybody has to be a dreamer. Without a dream, we cannot exist. Without hopes in life, we cannot exist. So everybody is a dreamer, fine. But then dreams have to be translated into action. For that, we need to work on it. We need to develop those resources. We need to have that foresight. So we can't do over speeding. For example, if somebody is driving on a national highway, 8-lane highway, there has to be a limit on speeds. Jamuna Expressway came up around, Delhi. Everybody was very happy. The young driver said, oh, fine, we'll go on 140. But let me tell you, ever since it has started running, it has become operational. It has seen the maximum number of accidents. And in winters, when roads are covered with fog, the accidents multiply. And I know many young friends now who put their vehicle on throttle at 80 and move on. They say we'll go reach 10 minutes later, but we cannot run at 140. These are the dangers of overspeeding in life. We have to match the rhythm. If we see the fog in front of us, how can we afford to drive the vehicle at 140 kmph? It is outlandish. I mean, it is foolishness, but this is happening in life. We dream big. We think we'll become something like Amitabh Bachchan, but we tend to forget that he was the guy who was rejected by All India Radio for a bad voice. And now the whole world is fond of his great voice, as they call it. Even a painter like Leonardo da Vinci, painter of great Mona Lisa, The Last Supper. Have we ever thought that this gentleman, Leonardo da Vinci, took years and years to paint Mona Lisa? And I was going through the whole text of Renaissance. There was a lady who used to come and sit in this studio. And then, all sorts of things were happening. When Leonardo da Vinci was painting Last Supper, for 6 months, church had given him the assignment. For 6 months, he used to go out every day on the street and come back. So finally, the person who had told him to paint the Last Supper, he told, look, you have wasted 6 months. You have not done anything. Your canvas is lying there. You have not used your pen or pencil, whatever is there. I'm not a painter, so I cannot use that technical term. He said, look, for 6 months, I'm looking for those faces in my town, which can be exactly what the faces look like in the Last Supper, according to my imagination. And you'll be surprised to know that Leonardo da Vinci was jobless initially. He wrote to the Duke that, look, I'm an engineer. I can work on dams. I can make arms and ammunition. Kindly give me a job. Even a great painter like Leonardo da Vinci, whose Mona Lisa painting gets escorted by nuclear ships today, so he had to wait for years for success in life. We want overnight success. It doesn't happen like that. It doesn't happen like that. You go through the history of every successful person. They have labored and toiled a lot.
Hello, sir.
Hello?
Yes, sir.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir. Yes,
Okay, can I proceed? I have, I think, 7-8 minutes left.
yes, sir, you can proceed.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Thank you. So I was talking about the long, gestation period of successful people. They take years to, to be a successful person, whether it is politics, whether it is any profession, whether it is any profession, you take up any profession and see the history of any person who has changed the face of the world, they have worked for years. Even a person like Charles Darwin, he moved out on his ship for years, collecting the samples. Then he brought back the samples, and then he evolved his theory of evolution, the origin of species as we know it. So what I wanted to submit, my friends, is that speed should be there, energy should be there, evaluation of resources should be there, optimism should be there, but everything should be put in proper context. We have to assess the situation outside. What we think inside definitely will matter. Our goal that we have fixed for ourselves, it will definitely matter. But what actually matters for actualization of goal, for translation of our dreams into reality, is the context, is the outside context. For example, if the job market is bad, we have to think and rethink and come to a conclusion that, well, my seniors got wonderful jobs. I'm not getting it. But we have to understand and appreciate that the pre-pandemic scenario has not yet come. The whole world economy is suffering even today, and especially this war, the Ukrainian-Russian war, is worsening the whole scenario. I know of many sectors
I think it's getting disconnected.
university campus. So we have to be careful about it, friends. We have to match our idealism with our pragmatism. And lastly, before I conclude myself, I am reminded of a famous poem of T.S. Eliot, which summarizes my whole theme. And I would like to, it's a very small poem. It's called The Hollow Men. I would like to read out the poem because it's very deep and meaningful. Between the idea and the reality, between the idea and the reality, between the motion and the act, falls the shadow. For thine is the kingdom. Go ahead, dream. And he further says, between the conception and the creation, between the emotion and the response, falls the shadow. Life is very long. Don't be pessimistic. There may be some emotion. There may not be the adequate response. It happens in life, whether it's love or whatever. And further he says, between the desire and the spasm, that is actualization of desire, between the desire and the spasm, between the potency and the existence, what actually you possess and what actually you want to possess,